India has spoken. It has chosen to end trade with America, not out of hostility, but out of principle, out of the desire to walk its own path, free from the shadows of dependency. And in that single act, the world has witnessed a new chapter unfold. But India did not stand still. It shifted its gaze eastward, northward, toward Russia, toward China, toward alliances that rewrite the very balance of global power. This is not merely economics. It is not simply about goods tariffs or markets. It is about self-respect, sovereignty, and the courage to say, we will not be dictated to. For decades, America held the reins of global trade, believing its influence unshakable. Yet here stands India, a nation of over 1 billion souls, declaring that no nation, no superpower, no matter how strong, can decide its destiny. When India turns toward Russia, it strengthens bonds forged in decades of cooperation, in defense, in energy, and in trust. When it reaches toward China, it signals to the world that in this new era, partnerships are not limited by old rivalries, but guided by future necessity. This is not the story of isolation. It is the story of evolution. And let the world remember this truth. Every great nation rises when it dares to take bold steps. The United States may have underestimated India's resolve, but the world has now seen it, a sovereign voice unshaken, unwilling to bow. This moment will echo across history books. It will remind us that trade is more than the exchange of goods. It is the exchange of power. And when power is imbalanced, the justice demands correction. So let the skeptics watch. Let the critics speak. India has chosen its course, a course that honors its people, its pride, and its unyielding spirit. And to those who doubt, remember this: the future does not belong to those who cling to the past. The future belongs to those who are brave enough to create it. India's decision to end trade with America was not a sudden impulse, but a carefully calculated step rooted in years of observation, experience, and resilience. For decades, the United States held a dominant position in global trade, dictating terms and expecting compliance from its partners. India, though respectful and cooperative, began to realize that this relationship lacked the foundation of equality. Trade is never just about goods or currency. It is a reflection of respect, sovereignty, and acknowledgement of each other's strength. And when one side feels dismissed or treated as a subordinate rather than a partner, the foundation begins to crack. India's choice to walk away was not about animosity. It was about dignity. This move sent a clear message: a nation of over 1 billion people, with one of the fastest growing economies in the world, will not remain bound by relationships that compromise its self-respect. The easy path would have been to stay silent, to continue under pressure, and to maintain the status quo. But progress is never born out of comfort. Progress demands bold decisions, and bold decisions often come at the cost of temporary discomfort. By stepping away from American trade, India demonstrated that it values principle over dependency. Yeah. Every sovereign nation must protect its right to make independent choices. For India, the time had come to declare that it would not be dictated to, it would not accept unfair terms, and it would not bend under external pressure. This act of defiance was not reckless, but visionary. It showcased that true power lies not in clinging to outdated partnerships, but in daring to create new ones that reflect mutual trust and shared respect. The decision also served as a powerful lesson for the world. Respect cannot be demanded through influence alone. It must be earned through fairness. India's refusal to accept anything less became a defining moment in modern history. It was a reminder that when dignity is compromised, trade is meaningless. India's bold step was more than the end of an agreement. It was the beginning of a new era, one where its voice is unshaken, its principles are intact, and its sovereignty stands above all else. When India turned away from America, it did not retreat into isolation. Instead, it chose to redirect its vision toward new horizons, toward nations that have long shared bonds of cooperation and understanding. The shift toward Russia and China was not merely a change of partners, but a signal to the world that India is determined to carve out its own space in the global order. Russia, with its history of defense collaboration, energy partnerships, and mutual trust, offers India a sense of reliability that goes back decades. China, despite its complexities and rivalries, presents vast opportunities in trade, technology, and infrastructure. By reaching toward both, India demonstrated that its foreign policy is rooted in pragmatism and courage, not hesitation or fear. This pivot is not about replacing one dependency with another. It is about balance. It is about creating a multipolar environment where no single nation holds disproportionate influence over India's decisions. By forging deeper ties with Russia, India strengthens its energy security, defense industry, and geopolitical stance. By engaging with China, India gains access to one of the world's largest markets and positions itself within the dynamic networks of Asian trade. This combination reshapes not only India's future, but also the global balance of power. Critics may question whether aligning with Russia and China carries risks, yet every great leap forward requires navigating challenges. What matters most is that India is choosing its direction rather than having it chosen for them by another power. This autonomy transforms perception. India is no longer seen as a follower of Western dictates, but as a leader crafting its own alliances. The symbolism of this shift is as powerful as the practical benefits. It shows that India refuses to be cornered, refuses to be pressured, and refuses to be underestimated. The world watches carefully as this transformation unfolds. For some, it brings uncertainty. For others, inspiration. Because the message is clear, India will not stand still. It will not cling to comfort zones. Instead, it steps boldly into new partnerships, not out of weakness, but out of strength. And in doing so, it reminds us all that true progress comes from embracing change, not resisting it. Trade has always been perceived as the exchange of goods, currency, and resources, but in reality, it is far more profound. Every agreement, every negotiation, every treaty carries within it the weight of power. When two nations trade, they are not just exchanging products, they are exchanging influence, trust, and a measure of control. For too long, trade between India and America was framed in the language of economics. Yet beneath the surface, it reflected an imbalance of power. India was expected to comply with terms that did not always favor its growth, to adjust policies that suited another nation's interest more than its own, and to accept conditions that at times undermined its sovereignty. This is why India's decision to walk away was so significant. It was not rejecting goods, but rejecting the imbalance. By ending trade under such circumstances, India reminded the world that dignity is not for sale. A nation's sovereignty cannot be bartered away in the name of economic cooperation. Every shipment, every tariff, every clause in a trade deal tells a story of who holds authority, and India decided it would no longer allow that story to be one of submission. In a globalized world where economies are deeply interwoven, such a move carries risks, but it also carries a message: respect must be mutual, or there is no foundation for partnership. This act redefined the meaning of trade for India. No longer could it be seen merely as a financial transaction. It had to be recognized as an instrument of self-respect. The United States, accustomed to its dominant role, may have believed that the economic pressure would bend India's will. But India proved that economic gain is worthless if it comes at the cost of independence. That lesson reverberates far beyond the borders of India. Other nations now see that trade is not about who sells more or buys more. It is about who stands taller. In this bold step, India elevated trade from the realm of numbers to the realm of principles. It showed that power in trade does not lie in profit margins alone, but in the courage to walk away when the balance is unjust. That is the true essence of sovereignty. India's decision to end trade with America carried with it a message that was impossible to ignore. It was not spoken in anger, nor was it wrapped in hostility. It was a message carved out of quiet strength and unshakable resolve. For decades, America had positioned itself as the undisputed leader of global commerce, often assuming that its influence alone was enough to dictate the terms of engagement. Many nations complied, whether out of fear, necessity, or the hope of favor. But India, with its deep sense of history and its growing confidence on the world stage, chose a different path. By walking away, it told America that influence is not permanent and respect must always flow both ways. This move exposed a deeper truth. Power without balance cannot sustain itself. The United States may have believed that economic leverage would always ensure compliance, but India demonstrated that leverage loses its meaning when dignity is at stake. No trade deal, no investment, no market access can outweigh the sovereignty of a nation that knows its worth. America was forced to confront the reality that its dominance is not unchallenged and that even partners once considered reliable will choose independence over subservience. The message went beyond economics. It was about redefining relationships. India was not rejecting America's friendship, but it was rejecting inequality in that friendship. True partnership cannot be built on demands. It must be built on mutual recognition of strength. India's decision was a way of saying, we are not here to be managed. We are here to be respected. This statement resonates not only with America, but with every nation watching closely, perhaps considering their own positions in a world where power dynamics are shifting. The significance of this message lies not in the short-term consequences, but in the long-term transformation it sparks. It reminds global powers that respect cannot be commanded, it must be earned. India's voice carried across borders, reshaping how others view negotiations, alliances, and sovereignty. The lesson is timeless. No superpower, no matter how strong, can decide another nation's destiny. And India, by choosing courage over compliance, proved that even the mightiest can be challenged when principle becomes the guiding force. When India turned toward Russia and China, it did more than shift trading partners. It redefined the balance of power in the modern world. For decades, the global order has been shaped by a single dominant force, with America holding the lion's share of influence over markets, politics, and alliances. But the world is changing. Nations are no longer willing to be confined to a system where one country dictates the terms and others are expected to follow. India's move symbolized a broader evolution, one in which power is no longer concentrated in the hands of a few but distributed among many. By strengthening ties with Russia and China, India helped lay the groundwork for a multipolar world order. Russia brings with it decades of trust in defense, energy, and strategic collaboration. China offers vast networks of trade, innovation, and economic dynamism. Together, they present India with opportunities that go beyond financial gain. They present a chance to break free from a one-sided global structure. This alignment creates new centers of influence, allowing countries to diversify their relationships and build a system where no single nation has the authority to overshadow the rest. It is not about replacing America. It is about ensuring that no country, not even the most powerful, can stand unchallenged at the top. This rebalancing carries immense significance for smaller nations as well. Many have long felt trapped in a world where choices were limited, where alliances were dictated, and where sovereignty was compromised in exchange for access to global markets. India's actions serve as a signal that alternatives exist, that nations can stand together, pool their strengths, and resist the pressures of a one-dimensional order. The global stage is now more dynamic than ever. As India aligns with Russia and China, it creates ripples that will influence not only trade, but also diplomacy, security, and technological progress. It is a reminder that the future belongs to coalitions, not monopolies. In this emerging multipolar world, respect must be negotiated, influence must be shared, and no single voice can drown out the chorus of many. India has not just changed its partners, it has changed the game itself, ensuring that the balance of global power reflects fairness rather than dominance. India's decision to end trade with America and forge its own path will be remembered not as a moment of weakness, but as a legacy of courage. History teaches us that the turning points of nations often arise when they choose dignity over convenience, principle over profit, and sovereignty over submission. For India, this was such a moment. It could have chosen to remain in the comfort of an established partnership, accepting terms that did not serve its people, but it refused. Instead, it chose to stand tall, declaring to the world that independence is priceless and self-respect cannot be compromised. This choice will echo for generations to come. Future leaders will look back and recognize that this was the era when India refused to bend under pressure, when it placed the pride of its people above the temporary gains of trade. It will be remembered as the point when India demonstrated to the world that economic relationships are not merely transactions of goods, but reflections of values. The courage to walk away is often greater than the convenience of staying. And in doing so, India set a precedent that will inspire countless others. For ordinary citizens, this decision represents more than geopolitics. It symbolizes a government willing to prioritize sovereignty, to endure the hardships that may follow, and to shield the dignity of the nation. Such actions create trust, not only among its people, but also among nations who seek fairness in a world that has long been dominated by unequal power structures. The choice becomes a story of resilience, one that future generations will carry with pride. The legacy of this moment is not bound to India alone. Across the globe, smaller nations and rising economies now have an example to follow, a reminder that no matter how great the pressure, no matter how powerful the other side, it is possible to hold firm. It is possible to say no, and it is possible to emerge stronger from that decision. In this way, India's bold move will not only shape its own destiny, but also influence the destiny of the world, leaving behind a mark of unyielding strength and unbreakable self-respect.